Hello, my name is Luna, and this is my submission for assignment 4, The Future of Special Education. To begin with, I wanted to discuss some of the contemporary as well as historical issues that exist within the field of special education. To begin with, I wanted to discuss disproportionality, which refers to the under and overrepresentation of student groups within special education. This can refer to the over or underrepresentation of minority students or students of color within different categories of special education. This is an issue primarily due to the kind of biased attitudes and biases within the referral processes in which students are being compared to kind of maybe colorblind standards or white normative standards. Additionally, we have the issue of deficit thinking in the medical model. Although we have made great strides in sorts of moving towards the social model, this is still reflected in aspects of the literature and particularly within the diagnostic criteria. As particularly critical because this means we often neglect to involve disabled individuals in conversations about their own education or their own health. Now to move on to kind of a summary of my budget of my theoretical 99 cents, I really wanted to kind of disperse my budget as equally as possible, or at least to make sure everyone got a slice of the pie. So I decided to dedicate 9 cents to anti-racist and ableist practice. I feel like this particularly relates to why we see disproportionality persist in special education and the sort of lack of agency that is present within education overall. Additionally, I wanted to allocate 10 cents to more inclusive IEP processes. I think it's really important to have a holistic understanding of students and to involve their families in a deeper level. Additionally, I wanted to allocate 10 cents to culturally competent teaching. Again, this relates to having a kind of holistic understanding of students and valuing diverse areas of strength and incorporating their culture and cultural teachings into the classroom. Additionally, I wanted to provide 15 cents for pathways to higher education. It's really important to provide students with means to live life according to their own goals. To round out or for finish up my budget, I wanted to provide 20 cents respectively to universally designed classroom spaces and curriculum. I think these are really important because they provide benefits for all students, and it's a really great way for students to make the classroom a safe space and to provide opportunities for students to present information in novel ways and learn various skills. I also wanted to provide 15 cents to personalized learning and improved accommodations. It's really important also to kind of provide individualized help and assistance to students who might need that additional support to make sure all students have the means to succeed and reach their full potential. To expand a little bit on the rationale for what I wanted to do for each category and why I allotted the money I did, I kind of collapsed some of the categories together because I had similar reasonings. So for anti-racist and ableist practice and culturally competent teaching, I thought these were both related, particularly to the disproportionality issue. So we're making great strides toward the social model and of understanding intersectionality better, but bias is still present at an institutional level, and we really need to ensure that students feel safe and respected within the classroom and to foster a sense of belonging that incorporates all aspects of their culture. For more inclusive IEP processes and pathways to higher ed, it's been a consistent issue that families and students are often left out of the conversation when developing IEPs. So we really also need to consider a student's input and to assume competence for them. This relates to the issue of deficit thinking and medical model, in which many of these students are just often not viewed as being like smart enough or capable enough to think of their education or to have their own kind of dreams and goals. And this kind of relates to the family sometimes of why not they might not be included. So I think it's important to invest more in this so as to just have give students a greater means to like exert their own agency and to allow parents and families to advocate for their students. In terms of universally designed classrooms and curriculum, I think it's one of the most vital ways to engage students in material. And again, I think one of the reasons why this is such a critical area to invest in is because it's really meant to benefit all students and one of the most wide-reaching and direct approaches. If we can invest in something that will have kind of the greatest output or direct effect on a greater percentage of students, that's why I think it's a particularly like important area to invest in, just because it really will have such a positive and wide-reaching effect on such a wide range of students. in terms of personalized learning and accommodations. I also do think this is a really important area to invest in because it sees students and individuals and it gives them a means to like use skills outside of the classroom and it can really engage their interest and attention for longer. So it really just helps to see students as individuals and gives them a lot of more personalized attention and help that, maybe UDL does a lot of the base work or grounding, but then this personalized learning and accommodations can really kind of step in and round out that help just to give students a much more like wider and inclusive learning experience and set them up for success as best as possible. In terms of suggestions that I have for how to best incorporate change, I really recommend the use of frameworks and models that specifically seek to benefit families, educators, and students, such as the multi-tiered systems of support, which we talked about at length during our session in week 9. So it's specifically meant to be a much more engaging and collaborative process, and it's adjustable based on how each district chooses to incorporate it. So I think that's what makes it such a like special and important framework to incorporate because it really does take you into account all these kind of prior categories or changes that I was talking about earlier and seeks to approach students holistically and give them as much access and support as they need based on where they're at. However, MTSS is just one framework and model that exists and it's just constantly being like developed and incorporated in unique ways. And there's so many other frameworks and models that we can seek out on the literature. However, speaking about literature, one of the other kind of major suggestions that I have is encapsulated perfectly within this saying, nothing about us without us. We always want input from the student and from the disabled community when incorporating changes. Despite me giving like this rationale and all these explanations for what I think is important, it really is key to ask the community themselves what is most critical for them and to them. This is especially relevant when we're conducting research and when we're making recommendations because lived experience and, yeah, lived experience is always something that is going to be the most critical or valuable. And we want to make sure that our research or the literature and the recommendations and changes we are suggesting are reflective of people's lived experiences and opinions. That's something that was particularly relevant just even in week 1 when we were talking about how language matters and that sometimes the way the literature approaches language and how the activist or disabled community approaches things differ. So it's important to have these differences in mind and to, as I said, just always think about what is important to the individual and to the community as a whole when we are considering changes. So this concludes my presentation, and thank you so much for listening.